Good afternoon and welcome to Wednesday Wisdom program featuring Bill Lietzau. Please welcome INSA Vice President for Policy, Larry Hanauer.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for Wednesday Wisdom with INSA. We're pleased to welcome one of our community's senior leaders to the program. Before we begin, let me make a few housekeeping notes. First, we hope to make this as interactive as possible. Please submit questions through the Q&A box on the right side of your screen. We have nearly 550 attendees this afternoon, and we'll do our best to get to all of your questions. Second, we're pleased to welcome members of the press to the call today. So as a reminder, this program is on the record. And finally, I'd like to thank our sponsor, Microsoft Azure, for their critical support of this program. We couldn't deliver this kind of thought leadership without the support of our partners. I'm pleased now to welcome Joe Schmank, Program Director for Microsoft Azure Government Cloud. Joe, over to you.
Thank you, Larry. I really would like to thank INSA for hosting this program and for all that you do to keep the community connected. Microsoft's a proud sponsor of INSA, and we're committed to supporting the mission-critical needs of the national security customers we all have. Our Microsoft Azure Government Cloud helps you do more for the mission with greater intelligence at the edge, unified security to protect the nation's data, and secure remote collaboration for analysts and tactical teams working around the world. We continue to bring new commercial capabilities to our dedicated Azure Government Cloud regions to meet the great demand for greater agility in the classified space. In addition to the secret government cloud that we offer, we've recently completed the build out of the new Azure Government Top Secret regions. Now it's my privilege to introduce today's speaker. As Director of the Defense Counterintelligence and Security Agency, Bill Lietzau leads the agency's personnel vetting and critical technology protection missions, overseeing approximately 12,000 federal and contract support personnel worldwide. Additionally, he directs the development of an end-to-end national level information technology infrastructure designed to support the personnel vetting enterprise. Previously, Bill served as the director of the Personnel Vetting Transformation Office, where he managed the transfer of the National Background Investigations Bureau to the nascent DCSA and initiated and led associated transformational efforts. A retired Marine Corps colonel, Bill served 27 years as an infantry officer and then judge advocate, commanding at the company, battalion, and installation levels. Welcome, Bill. We're all really looking forward to the conversation today.
Thanks, Joe and Larry, and happy to be here.
Great. Thanks, Joe. Thanks to Microsoft Azure for supporting this program, as always. Bill, welcome. We're really glad to have you with us today. We know you've got a lot on your plate, and so we appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to share some insights. I know INSA's member companies and a lot of others are interested in some of the things you have to say, because, of course, the security clearance process affects just about everything we do in the trusted workforce. So you've taken over DCSA relatively recently, but the agency's changed a lot over the last couple of years. It's taken on investigative functions from OPM and the National Background Investigations Bureau. You've taken on counterintelligence and industrial security work from legacy DSS, and you've expanded it. So tell us about the changes of the agency and the growth that you've overseen during your tenure.
No, sure, I'd be happy to, and it's why I'm so willing to do things like this, because I think if the nation is going to get the value out of what came together here at DCSA, we really do need to explain it a little bit so people understand, because it's even more than when you say changes at the agency. Technically, it's the Defense Security Service changed its name to the Defense Counterintelligence and Security Agency, and then it absorbed some various components from 7 or 8 offices, bureaus, depending how you look at it. But it really is more than that. It's really a completely new agency. If you think about it, for anyone out in industry who's been involved in mergers and acquisitions, it's kind of rare for a smaller company to absorb a much larger one. And that's part of what happened. The biggest changes that people are familiar with are the consolidated adjudication facility, National Background Investigation Bureau. They came to join Defense Security Service. So just look at it from a numbers perspective. DSS was a 800-man organization, about eight or 900,000 or $900 million a year. Now it absorbs these two agencies, and right then and there it became a 10,000-man organization, $2.5 billion a year, more than half of which is coming from a working capital fund that's taking contributions from over 100 different government agencies. So that's really a completely different animal. So this is really more than just a growing agency. It's really a new agency. In fact, on the wall outside where it shows previous directors, I got to somehow recognize to all the constituent organizations that have come together that there's no one senior one, that in fact it's really a new agency. You know, the new emblem that I think is behind me, the camera's pointed at it, so I hope you can see it. And that really is the picture here. It's been a lot of change for what for me has been an incredible, what I've learned is just an incredibly dedicated workforce. Everyone who takes over anything says that. I've taken over a lot of organizations in the past. Some you covered in my bio, there's others. I haven't said it to the degree that I have said it and mean it now. This team, from all the different constituent entities that were antecedent to DCSA, has got security professionals that are just patriotic Americans who absolutely care about our national security like no group of people I've ever seen. That's what has kept us going through this period of pretty tumultuous change, because we brought in, I mentioned those, the three agencies coming together a little over a year ago. We've since brought in organizations from DMDC, DISA, our information security agency, from DIA, we brought in the polygraph school, we brought in SCA accreditation issues, we brought in some overseas work. We brought in a lot of different components together, legacy IT systems, a lot of complexity in this last set of transfers. One was in October in 2019, another October of 2020. That makes it hard on everyone in the agency. Yet while doing that, I'm bragging. I know you didn't quite ask me this. I'm just going to brag about the employees a little bit. While doing that and going through COVID, they continue to improve on the performance of their mission. So yeah. I could not be more impressed with the people that are making up DCSA right now. We're using, you asked about how we're transforming, just to put the big picture is, we're using kind of a three-phased approach because it sounds nice in an alliteration: transfer, transition, transformation. You know, first we got all those groups together, made sure everyone got a paycheck the next day. So far, so good. Now we're transitioning and kind of getting the low-hanging fruit, the ways of gaining some efficiencies, merging offices, things like that. And then we're really looking at a more fundamental transformation, because we didn't get brought together just to reorganize. Right. We got brought together hopefully to do things differently. And frankly, I didn't mention, you know, there's the transfer change, there's the COVID change, but the third one really is the policies have been changing based on an all of government approach, at least in the vetting, personnel vetting situation, as many are familiar with. We're moving to a trusted workforce 2.0. So not only are we trying to improve the way we do things, but then we have to transform so that we can vet people, industry, contractors, business systems that are classified. That's what we do, is we vet those, and we vet them in a more intelligent way that fits 21st century threat picture. And so they're changing policies in the way we do business while going through this transformation.
So since you brought up the Trusted Workforce 2.0 program, that was launched about 3 years ago or so to improve the security clearance policy framework. Can you give us a little bit of an update as to where that initiative stands and what DCSA's role in the Trusted Workforce 2.0 initiative is?
Absolutely. Now, Trusted Workforce 2.0 covers the way we vet the trusted workforce of the United States. So there's security clearances, which probably more in your INSA audience are familiar with. And then there's suitability clearances, you know, this might not involve classified material, but going to be a child care worker or something like that. And so if you look across that spectrum, what has happened is all of the departments and agencies that have a government workforce, including the contractor workforce when you're talking about clearances, they've been working together in a performance accountability council to try to improve the way we do this business of personnel security. And they have been doing it for several years. They meet regularly. DCSA has a seat at that table. We have a slightly different seat at the table. So you'll have DNI and DHS and DOD, obviously, and agencies, industry representatives, and everyone else coming together. And then we show up kind of as the implementer. If you think of the Joint Chiefs of Staff shows up at a National Security Council meeting, not necessarily with the same vote that the Secretary of Defense might have, not that they necessarily vote, but because he's a provider of, he provides a capability, they could decide that we're going to vet everyone daily in every way imaginable. And I would have to say, no, we actually don't have a capability to do that. So we present the implementer's picture on that. Trusted Workforce 2.0, for those not tracking, it's designed to be a single system, a unified approach to vetting. It focuses on only 3 tiers when we previously had 5. So you have top secret, secret, and then just entry into the workforce with a trusted person. And then it has 5 scenarios. So there's your initial entry, and it all takes it through, transfer to another job, upgrade your clearance, all the way to re-entry onto the workforce after there's been a period of time when we have to check you out again. Those are the 5 scenarios. I didn't list all 5, but you can get the picture. But the essence of this move is moving from a situation where we would investigate someone at one period of time, and then maybe 5 or 10 years later, depending on the circumstances, reinvestigate and confirm that they can continue to have that clearance. Now we're moving to a continuous vetting scenario where we're looking constantly at data feeds that will provide us a better picture, and we can hopefully nip problems in the bud and not have for instance, a Navy Yard shooter or a Snowden type of situation again.
Right. So speaking of continuous vetting, I know that there are about 2.5 million or so people with clearances who are currently enrolled in continuous vetting, so that, as you say, you can use a constant influx of data to raise red flags, if any have arisen, rather than just wait 5 years or 10 years till the next reinvestigation. When do you think everyone can expect to be enrolled in continuous evaluation or continuous vetting?
Yeah,
and how will that change the way in which you manage the clearances?
Well, that's a great question, and unfortunately, I can't give you quite as pithy an answer as you might like. Because, for instance, when you say there's 2.5 million people enrolled, the goal is a Trusted Workforce 2.0 with a number of data categories and data sets that we would be looking at on a regularized basis, sometimes daily.
Right.
That's where we would like everyone to be ultimately. Right now, nobody is getting all of those data checks on a regular basis. Well, there are some people are, but it's small numbers comparatively. So if I've got a 4.1 million person cleared population, ultimately maybe 12 million with suitability clearances factored in, we're nowhere near there. When you say we have 2.5 million people in a continuous vetting, what we've done is we've recognizing that to get to that 2.0 with everyone in it, and we do believe in the next couple of years we will be able to do that. Mm-hmm. That requires some IT capabilities that are presently not available. I just adopted this October the NBIS system that's been in the works since the data breach, right, where the Chinese hacked into the OPM computer system. We adopted that, and as you can imagine, that is originally designed to replace an antiquated legacy IT system at OPM, built initially in 1984. It was an improvement, a more secure platform, but that's when the policy was changing at the same time. So we just re-baselined this IT system this last spring, as soon as I took over as director, re-baselined it with a view toward meeting this Trusted Workforce 2.0 goal. So it'll have additional capabilities. That will allow us to get there, but we can't build it instantly. So what we've done is we've built a more manual capability that we're calling Trusted Workforce 1.5 and Trusted Workforce 1.25.
Okay.
When you talk about 2.5 million people in continuous vetting, it's the Trusted Workforce 1.25 that has the people continuous vetting. I still have a way to go to get those people all the way into the Trusted Workforce 2.0. In all cases, however, though, it does obviate the immediate need for a reinvestigation.
Right.
So we're going to focus more on what we did, obviously, is we picked the highest value data sets, the ones that are going to give us the biggest bang for the buck, and also the least chaff, hits that are the wrong person that come too regularly, things like that. We take the most valuable data, we look at that, we can feel the greatest level of comfort. Everyone involved in the process agrees, just getting those data sets is the 90% solution. We are more secure as a country with that today. But ideally, we're going to get it to an improved state. It will take a couple years to get there. And then the difference will be, once you're in the door, we're not going to reinvestigate every 5 years. So you're going to save tax dollars on that.
Right.
But we're going to be continuously evaluating and perhaps taking the kinds of adjudicative actions we might have to take for these incremental events in a person's life that could change it.
So with a complex process to begin with, and then adding continuous vetting and all the data sets that involves on top of everything, the computer system, the NBIS, the National Background Investigation System, is really sort of the key to all this. So what's the status of the system, and when will it be fully rolled out and fully online? And how are you going to use that system as opposed to all these legacy systems to make the process more efficient?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a difficult question because we've, some of you also know we've just adopted the DIS program that came with the DIS system that was under development, was owned by DMDC, and we have a manpower agency, and we've now brought it over to DCSA. We're going to have that is online, but we're making improvements to it because it wasn't really ready to take over for its predecessor, JPass, some are familiar with. All of these are going to come together. NBIS will give us an end-to-end system. Ultimately, for instance, and this will bother the people who are taking the time to enroll in DIS should be subsumed into NBIS as well. So you'll have one end-to-end system that initiates a background investigation. You fill out your SF-86 or whatever the appropriate form is at the time, and it takes us all the way through adjudication. So our adjudicators can also use the same platform, and we have a repository as well. So when you're doing visit requests, when you're doing transfers of eligibility for access, all of that can take place within the NBIS platform. Where are we on it? It's got to do two major things that weren't fully focused upon initially or over the years. The problem being DOD was asked to build this for an OPM that was on the other side of the Potomac River. You can imagine the difficulties one would have in getting the requirements appropriate, the funding needed to build it and everything else when you start with that scenario. But then the trusted workforce policies changed incrementally along the way. So when you put all that together, we got to a place where I decided in spring of this year, actually as in my previous job as PBTO, when looking at it and realizing Trusted Workforce 2.0 wasn't going to hit any finish line when they thought it was without this, we needed to completely re-baseline the NBIS project. We have done that. And I can proudly say I was just up at our Milestone facility near Fort Meade, I think Friday, and I was giving out coins to a workforce that had worked through the holidays, working late into the night. And what I can say is for the first time in the history of the NBIS program, they've now hit 3 milestones since the rebaselining on time. Had never previously hit a milestone. So we now only have the platform built, and a lot of great work was done before this rebaselining. Don't get me wrong. But it was to get a secure platform, cloud-based secure platform that development could take place on. And then they've been building, and now we have actual capabilities that are rolled out. Our adjudicators are using them. Some of our people in the continuous vetting arena are using, and those capabilities are now available to some in NBIS, and we have a plan that takes us to completion. One, to give us the Trusted Workforce 2.0 continuous vetting capability, but two, just as important, to replace that legacy IT system that was hacked into 5 years ago now. And I am holding that. I just adopted that one in October of this year as well. And we're holding that together with Band-Aids. So we have plenty of motivation to get NBIS working.
Good. I want to touch on one other clearance-related issue before we move on to some of the other missions that the agency has. And I want to touch, this was raised by one of our audience members, Jeff Selden, who asks about concerns about domestic violent extremism. Certainly, you know, the January 6 events at the Capitol highlighted the fact that some people who support anti-government violence hold or have held in the past security clearances or positions of public trust. So to what extent does the current investigation process enable DCSA to identify whether someone supports anti-government violence? And in particular, given that a lot of these activities and ideologies are disseminated and organized on social media, does the agency have the authority needed to assess social media postings for affiliations with anti-government groups?
Great question from Jeff, but it's a hard question, so we should not invite him next time.
Sorry, Jeff.
I was in fact just at up at Capitol Hill today, and there was very similar questions there because this is for obvious reasons. I'll say this, right? Okay, so we already, in our background investigation, the set of questions that people answer, the investigations that are done, they're looking to root out anti-government violence potential already. That's been in place. There's nothing new there. We continue to do it, and we will continue to do it. We now have an improvement to that system, continuous vetting. In the continuous vetting framework that we have in place, yes, we do find, we don't have a specific social media pull that looks for these kinds of things, but for instance, we're looking for any arrest record, we're looking for incident reports that come from an insider threat hub, a number of data sources that might indicate this kind of a scenario. And for example, yes, we have had clearance issues with people involved in the January 6th events that came to the fore because of the 2.5 million you talked about that were in that Trusted Workforce 1.25. It worked. It has worked, and we have taken appropriate action. That has included our industrial base. So that's the good news story. You asked more specifically about social media. Right now, I would say we have the authorities. Remember, I'm the implementer. So there's a policy group that's looking at what we can, should, have to, have authority to, must look at with respect to social media. It's a complicated area. And when we, I think right now, we certainly have the authorities to look at what I have the ability to look at. We have run a few pilot programs with social media to see what capabilities, how much bang for the buck would we get, how much would it cost. You've got identity resolution issues, you've got, you know, how verifiable is the data that you're seeing on that website. You've got all kinds of issues that we've had to clear through on our other data sources. And we're continuing to run pilot programs. In the meantime, though, right now we use it mostly for specific incidents. When there's an event that happens and we want to track more information to get a better feel before taking some sort of an adjudicative action, that's when we would use it. It's not a consistent and regular data pull across the you know, population.
So given though that the FBI director and others have said that that domestic extremism is possibly the greatest threat we face at the moment, is this something that's going to be a priority for you to do that sort of proactive pull, as you say, of social media data, so you can identify people who might have anti-government tendencies before there's an incident or before someone is able to, you know, do something inside the Trusted Workforce tent?
No, absolutely a priority. There's a bit of a question of where we're going to be able to leverage that the most. I mean, when you look at the workload of this agency, you know, I have about I won't say, but in this low hundreds of industrial security specialists and counterintelligence people out among 12,000 facilities and a much larger workforce. You can only put your assets in so many places, and that's why we need a intelligence threat picture to be able to focus our energies. We can't do it across the board. That the same is true with respect to the social media question. To give you a perspective on numbers, on the investigation side, not the continuous vetting, the adjudication, or the other parts of personnel vetting, but just the ingestion of new investigations, we bring in about 10,000 investigation requests a day.
Wow.
So if you just did those and didn't even do the continuous daily feeds that might involve social media, you can see that quickly what becomes important is the ability to scale this.
Right.
And I can't scale it with people. I don't have enough people to be looking.
No, you clearly need technology to be able to do that.
I need technology, and we're absolutely thinking ahead, and we're building the NBIS, National Background Investigation Service, systems, or service, I guess we already named it service. We're building that in a way that will give us the capability, as we get new machine learning, artificial intelligence capabilities, we can build it in to that framework so that we'll be able to leverage it better as we find better ways to tap into these social media.
So one other data point that you have to identify people with anti-government ties is the SF-86 form. And in section 29 of the form, the form asks about people's associations. And this dates back, I guess, to the 1950s when the government wanted to know if you were a card-carrying member of the American Communist Party and paid membership dues and all that. But nowadays, with groups that are mobilizing mostly on social media, people don't they don't carry a membership card. They don't necessarily pay membership dues. So does the SF-86 form, especially in the questions in section 29, need to be changed to elicit the kinds of answers you need to identify people with these kinds of ties? Or do the adjudication standards need to be modified to take into account this evolving threat?
Because I come at this from a lawyer, I'm going to get very technical. You said, does it need to be changed? And I'm going to say no. We're going to continue doing our work, and we're going to successfully do our work with the current form.
So would it be more effective, I guess?
Yes, and should it be changed? I can say right now, and I don't want to get into somebody else's turf. We're not the policymakers, but we absolutely inform that policy, and you can bet we're looking for who answers that question, in any way but the one you'd expect them to answer it with. And in fact, yes, there should be changes to the questions that we ask, the way we do investigations. There's no question about that. And the team is looking at that right now. The executive steering group that's looking at the policies on behalf of the executive agent. The executive agent for security is DNI. Executive agent for suitability is OPM. And we take our policy direction from those two executive agents to determine what we put on an SF-86 when we launch an investigation. Are we required to take fingerprints or not? That's the policy that we implement. And as the implementer, you can bet we are making suggestions on improvements to the way those questions are asked.
Great. Okay. I want to get to the counterintelligence missions that the agency has. Tell me about what you think are the highest counterintelligence threats to the defense enterprise, particularly regarding technologies. I know the department's heavily reliant on technologies and components that are made overseas. Certainly, adversaries are eager to penetrate our supply chains. So, what is the agency's principal role in protecting the defense enterprise from foreign supply chain threats and threats to the industrial base?
That's a great question. It's one that I think needs more attention. This is one I'd like to say, boy, I hope I could come back in a year from now and give you a better answer of how we're addressing it. I think it's
We'll put you on the calendar for February 24th, 2022. We can talk about it again.
But no, coming into this from the outside where I do, I've done, I didn't come from any of the constituent entities that form DCSA. I think that was probably by design, and I think it was probably a good thing. I come to try to make this organization work more efficiently. So in that regard, the downside is I don't have a depth of knowledge in any of these particular areas. The upside is I kind of have a clear set of objective eyes looking at the various mission spaces that we're responsible for. And while I'm very impressed with the way the interagency and the whole of US government has gotten together to work personnel vetting and improve it, and they are improving it, and we're going to implement the improvements, that same attention has not been given to the counterintelligence sphere and the critical technology sphere to the same degree. I have launched within this agency a number of looks at these things. We're working very hard to leverage the assets we have. I will say one of the things I asked for in Capitol Hill today was, hey, look at the number of critical technologies we're addressing. We sit side by side with industry. Yet, if you look at our ability to get a good picture of the threat, we have limited resources in that arena. I mean, I look at our mission sets as a product of a trusted person and a trusted workforce, a product of a trusted facility, entity, company, and trusted business systems, cleared classified systems. We vet to get those systems. I need a better threat picture because I can't focus on all of those threats, all the vulnerabilities. You know, we have gatekeeper, you can see in our emblem, we call ourselves America's gatekeeper. It's a great metaphor, but this is a lot more complex and more sophisticated than the medieval gatekeeper. The enemy's behind our lines already. The supply chain is not water and fuel and food and building supplies. The supply chain is software that's built overseas, and software that has an ability to do things that's not even, might go in a classified program, but it was not part of a classified program. So we have a good number of authorities in the classified sphere. With the controlled unclassified information, we have the authority at least to start looking outside of the classified realm. For instance, Operation Warp Speed, I had counterintelligence assets, industrial security assets supporting that mission quite a bit. That's outside, mostly outside of the National Industrial Security Program.
Right.
But we are not situated right now to stop what our team estimates somewhere in the $200 to $500 billion a year hemorrhaging of technologies to potential adversaries today. And we've got to up our game in that arena, and we're doing it. That's one of my highest priorities in looking at our mission sets right now.
So let me follow up on this with a question from someone in our audience, Robert Ashley, former DIA director. Thanks for watching today. He asks about supply chain. Given the services focus on supply chain and CI issues, how are you teaming with the services to deconflict supply chain efforts? And they would seem to be a force multiplier, given that you say it's difficult to have the resources to address all of these issues.
So months ago, Bob Ashley and I used to attend meetings together, and already he's turned on me after leaving DIA. But it is a great question, and that is going to be part of. We have to team with not just the services. We got a team with A&S. We got a team with all the whole acquisition community, because there's several ways to work this. One, we can change the way we look. We can focus our counterintelligence efforts to be able to see where is the threat coming from, and we match that up with a vulnerability and make a risk decision there. That's essentially what we do. That's what this agency does in all of its mission areas. But we have to get smarter in the threat picture. We have to be better leveraged with the other counterintelligence community. In fact, the briefing I was just at on the Hill was with the military department counterintelligence folks, where we have to work together more in getting a better threat picture. But the other thing is, as we look to close these vulnerabilities, we have those authorities we have in the NISP, but we also have to look at the authorities we can leverage much more quickly in contracting, where we can put contract clauses in that will, for instance, close a very similar, maybe a bigger vulnerability that is a lot longer stream to be able to change our authorities under the National Industrial Security Program. So we got to leverage all of our tools, and the tools that we can leverage the quickest require absolute coordination with the acquisition authorities across the services. I would like to say we're there. That's the thing that on February 24th next year, I'll be able to tell you about the great cooperation we've had with those communities to, one, shut off the vulnerabilities, and two, get a better threat picture.
Right. All right, it's a date. We'll put you on the calendar. Let me touch on another mission that you mentioned at the beginning that the agency was taking on, and that's SCIF accreditation. So the NDAA, which was passed in December, included a requirement that all contractor SCIFs and special access program facilities should be approved for co-use. So in other words, a contractor should be allowed to perform appropriately classified work in the facility, no matter which agency actually accredited it. And this will allow companies to make much more efficient use of scarce, secure facilities, which became a priority during the pandemic. So how will DCSA work as you take on the accreditation mission to implement this new statutory requirement?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I don't think DCSA will have the authority to itself implement all of the intent of that statutory requirement, because we can't. We don't have authority over how others deal with all SCIFs. But what we can do is, again, we'll be an implementer, and Bob Ashley gave us that mission, or before leaving, probably fully or portions of it, fully recognizing that the benefit, the reason to move it to DCSA, among others, is one, we're security oriented. We already do security of facilities. Right. So this is an extension of that. There's a logic to it. But the other thing it does is we are able to give a standardized way of doing business that once we get put in place, if we implement it properly, then it'll facilitate being able to comply with that NDAA requirement. And I think we'll be able to do that. It's the same kind of thing we'll do with personnel vetting, background investigations. We're now getting others asking us to do adjudications. If you have a standard process that's predictable and you can figure out how it's going to work, you can use that process and then maybe supplement with your own process. Well, we're going to have a polygraph take place after we get this package, right, or something like that on the personnel side. Same would be true with SCIFs. And the thing that we're doing, you asked earlier about working with the services. That's exactly what we're doing to prepare for the SCIF accreditation. We're planning on, right now, it's still being, the mission that we're taking on is still a DIA. The portion of SCIF accreditation that we take on is a DIA. We're moving it over, but we're working with the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, and the service secretaries and their shops to make sure that we implement it in a way that's consistent with how they'd want it implemented. And we end up with a pretty good baseline of how SCIF regulations are working.
Good. We have about 5 minutes left, so let me just run through a couple of questions that have come in and maybe lump a few of them together, and you can take on a couple at once. There are two questions that relate to clearance issues. One from Jose Brandon asking about how we're going to improve the process of clearance reciprocity, so enabling people to transfer clearances among agencies more efficiently and more quickly. And another question comes in from Teresa Thomas at MITRE, who says that she works with agencies to help them build a more neurodiverse workforce, focusing on talent who are on the autism spectrum. And the single most frequently asked question she gets is, what about clearances? Is there anything inherent to the clearance process that would disqualify candidates on the autism spectrum?
Okay, those are the two?
Those are the two. Yeah, so reciprocity and neurodiversity and clearances.
I was hoping you'd give me more so I could skip the hard ones, but
I'm saving the rest for 2022.
So first on the reciprocity, or well, I'll start with the neurodiverse workforce and autism. Honestly, I have to look into that. I'm not familiar with anything that would preclude someone from getting a clearance based on that alone. You know, we certainly get the question, for instance, a lot with psychological issues and things like that, and we of course want to encourage people to get help. What we're really looking for is things that would cause a risk to the United States, And I have not heard, but Teresa may be familiar with more instances where this could be a problem, but I've not heard of any specific concerns being expressed that autism was causing problems with respect to clearances.
Okay.
I guess it would depend on, the specifics of any particular case. So I probably have to, that's probably all I can say on that one. With respect to reciprocity, that's something, again, we don't control all of it because, of course, we're not making the reciprocity decision for everyone that may need reciprocity. We do make a lot of, within DOD, reciprocity decisions were being handled within our adjudication section that was one of those constituents that came over from the Consolidated Adjudication Facility over at Washington Headquarters Services. It's now part of DCSA. And one of the earliest questions I was getting after taking this job without, just trying to figure out what we're going to do about masks because COVID was starting, it was about reciprocity. And so we started digging into it. And people here, we're already digging into it because, like I said, we've got a workforce that is just always out there trying to improve the way they do work. It is impressive. And my adjudication branch had already done some Lean Six Sigma projects and started looking at how they could improve reciprocity. And I can say a year ago today, I want to say internal DOD, when we were giving reciprocity to somebody that comes from another agency, we were averaging somewhere between 86 and 110 days to make that reciprocity decision. We're now averaging 6 days to make the reciprocity decision, and we have good reason to believe that we will be able to make it even shorter based on some technological capabilities we're putting in place. So we're doing that now. NBIS is going to help the entire security enterprise of the United States do it even faster in the future. For probably the same reason visit requests will go easier and things like that, because you'll have a single repository that other agencies can use, and hopefully all would tap into at least for those purposes. So I think we've got a good news story going forward on that.
Terrific. One last question, and we'll wrap up. So maybe in a minute or so, we have a question from Marcel Lettra from Lockheed Martin, former USDI. And he asks, if you could take out a clean sheet of paper and redesign the security and counterintelligence system from scratch, what are the 1 or 2 things that you might do?
Wow, that's the last question for minutes left.
Well, because I didn't ask you for the 78 or 79 things you might do. I just asked about 1 or 2.
Well, in some ways, we do have a little bit of an ability to do that with this agency. I will say this: if you'd asked me even a year ago, but well, maybe not a year ago, 2 years ago in my past, was I seeking this job? No, wasn't on my radar at all. Serendipitous circumstances, divine intervention put me in a place where I'm here to take it. I could not imagine a better job. This is the importance of this mission, of all of our mission sets, and its direct impact on national security on a daily basis. The fact that my team is in a fight today, we're not just collecting intelligence to, for the future. We're for a future potential conflict.
Right.
We are absolutely in that conflict today as we try to keep our industrial base secure and keep some of these things out of the hands of potential adversaries. That mission is awesome, and you couldn't ask for a better time to come, because we're coming as we're coming together as an agency. So we have a major initiative in place to kind of relook at the operating model while we keep the missions going. So I've got, right now we count them as 7 mission leads. I kind of broke down you described it, I think, as personnel vetting and industrial or critical technology protection. Mm-hmm. I've broken it into background investigations, adjudications, continuous vetting, insider threat, critical technology protection, counterintelligence, and training. We have a very robust training program that we haven't talked about much, but all of those mission spaces, that was my transitional organizational chart. It was done for a purpose so that I could then turn to my chief strategy officer, who comes from that PVTO organization I was part of, Personnel Vetting Transformation Office, the job of which is to just not have to worry about day-to-day business, not have to worry about how we, operate daily to get our mission done better, decrease the timeline it takes to get a top secret clearance, which they've been doing great on, decrease the time to get reciprocity. They've been doing great on that. The missions are doing that. My chief strategy office is looking at this whole operating model and where we can get the synergies. I would say that so that was the kind of long answer that we are doing that. We do have sort of a blank sheet of paper. We have to keep the airplane flying while we're changing it into a jet, but other than that, it's a blank sheet of paper. And if I were to, the biggest thing that I think has been missing in recent years is this agency and its antecedent or offices and agencies. They were started out looking at vulnerabilities, and they were looking at, hey, we're the gatekeeper. Is the gate going to hold up? As opposed to looking at the threat. And so the counterintelligence component of this agency wasn't really even there many years ago. It's been growing since, but it hasn't grown enough. We're going to have a new operating model, hopefully from that blank sheet of paper. But I would say one of the things is we've got to really emphasize the whole country needs to, not just DCSA, but DCSA needs to look at the threat picture better to be able to focus our efforts. And that threat picture, I would say from a national perspective, and certainly Marcel Lettre and Bob Ashley and the people that you've already working with out there, they know better than I do how to improve that threat picture. But from a national perspective, my kind of less informed, certainly don't have as much experience as your questioners do, but I would think they would agree that we have given a little bit of short shrift to the industrial security portion of our intelligence focus.
Right.
That's the crown jewels of this country right now. That's where our adversary is focused. And when we build this new operating model, I want to be able to focus on that.
All right, well, maybe that'll be the subject of our next discussion next year in February 22 or maybe before. Bill, I want to thank you today for your time. Really appreciate your insights. Thank you and your staff for all the good work that you're doing to keep the nation safe and to keep the workforce in good shape. So thanks very much today for all that you do. So for all of you watching online as well, thank you for joining us, and thank you for Microsoft Azure for sponsoring this program. Let me just look ahead a little bit to other INSA events. This Friday, in recognition of Black History Month, INSA's charitable arm, the Intelligence and National Security Foundation, will hold a roundtable discussion on diversity and national security in partnership with Cornerstone Government Affairs. Congressman Benny Thompson, chair of the House Homeland Security Committee, will kick off the program, which will feature a panel discussion of leaders from the intelligence community, Congress, academia, and industry. Yesterday, INSA announced the launch of our inaugural 8A National Security Showcase. This June 8 and 9 virtual event offers the opportunity for 8A businesses to market their innovative national security technologies, applications, and services to procurement representatives from prime contractors and the 18 intelligence community agencies. As part of our showcase outreach efforts, INSA will hold a March 9 webinar, 8A and the IC, Big Opportunities for Small Businesses, that will feature small business representatives from NGA, from Wovenware, a successful IC 8A subcontractor, and IVSys, a minority-owned small business active in the IC that's graduated from the 8A program. On March 10th, Dave Frederick, the executive director of US Cyber Command, will join us for a Wednesday afternoon discussion. And then on March 16th, the Coast Guard's Assistant Commandant for Intelligence, Rear Admiral Andrew Sugimoto, will join us for a Tuesday morning coffee and conversation. I'll be moderating that discussion, which I'm looking forward to. So as always, visit insaonline.org for full details and to register and to keep current on INSA news and programs. When the webinar ends, there'll be a short survey that pops up. Please take a few moments to complete it and let us know how we did. This concludes today's program. Stay safe and healthy and have a good afternoon.